Hey everybody, welcome back to the Hard4Games channel. I'm your host, Tony, and today I want to explore and showcase the Family Computer Network System, sometimes known as the Famicom Network Adapter. So I want to give you a little bit of history and also showcase some of the software running. I say running in quotes because, it'll be turned on, but not connected to any sort of network because it is long since been discontinued. But that said, we have JRA-PAT, the Japan Racing Association software for it, for horse race betting, and also the rather rare Super Mario Club cartridge. I feel like a lot of the YouTube videos out there that feature the network adapter really dive into the history and the business dealings and do a great job of that, but kind of skimp out on actually showing footage of the software. So I wanted to add that back into the conversation a little bit, and I hope that you all enjoy. So in mid-1987, Nintendo began their partnership with Nomura Securities to create the Famicom Network Adapter. They wanted to take advantage of Nintendo's Japanese base of 12 million people who owned Famicoms by creating a network adapter which would provide dial-up access to Nomura's financial services, primarily to get stock information, buy and sell said stocks, and to get other financial info. Nintendo would be responsible for the modem and the hardware, and Nomura would be responsible for the database and network. And at the time, there was a bubble, an economic bubble in Japan. The markets were booming, people were very interested in purchasing and selling stocks, so the time was ripe for something like this, or so they thought. So the unit was ultimately released in 1988, which was actually a very quick turnaround and allowed users to take advantage of the bubble, which burst shortly thereafter. And soon, other organizations, such as the Japan Racing Association, saw the network system's potential and also produced a cart, this time one that allowed users to bet on horse races. In fact, the application at one point captured 35% of Japan's horse race betting, with 100,000 Famicom units being utilized for this purpose. However, like I mentioned, Japan was in an economic bubble, which soon burst after this was launched. So its initial purpose became less potent, essentially. People were less interested in buying and selling stocks and were generally just keeping away from trading. So it never really took off, despite the horse race application being relatively popular among that crowd. Other reasons why it didn't really sell well included people just not understanding it. Some individuals thought of the Famicom more as a toy and didn't trust it to access their financial information. People were just used to traditional ways of either betting or buying and selling stocks. And there were even some instances where people would get at home and realize that their telephone line and their power outlets were too far apart and just didn't want to deal with it. Now, toward the end of its life, Nintendo put these in retail locations and created the Super Mario Club cartridge. This allowed users to go into the store and look up online reviews of Famicom titles, which is pretty cool. People could also directly message Nintendo, and Nintendo took these messages in addition to the different searches for the different games that people would do, and essentially utilized that as market research. So it basically allowed customers to interact with the company, and the company took that information to see what was popular. So this thing had a lot of potential, and there were even online network games being developed for it, which were all scrapped. Basically, it was just a little bit too ahead of its time. But like I mentioned earlier in the episode, there's a lot of history out there on YouTube and online, but not a ton of software footage. So let's go ahead and dive into that. All right, in case you haven't guessed, this is the Japan Racing Association software. Quick note here, there is a custom number pad controller for this particular peripheral. The regular Famicom controllers will not work. Now, I'm just going to be doing a very rough Google Translate of these, and as I do it, and as I use the camera here, the words actually change, but I'll just be giving a rough idea as to what it's saying. So here we have to enter our subscriber number and our password, which of course will do nothing for us, but it'll allow us to advance to the next screen, hopefully. And of course, everything's Nintendo themed here. So we have the Super Mario Brothers blocks. Here we go. It's asking me if I want to get today's requirements. We'll say yes. It's trying to connect, but it cannot. Connect the phone line. Check the connection. Again, it's trying to connect, but of course it can't. So this time instead, I'm going to say that I don't want today's requirements. Here we have a date and a time. And again, I'm just using Google Translate for this. It's very rough. It's pretty inaccurate, but I didn't want to have someone translate a bunch of betting information, so I just want to give an idea as to what this is. And here I have absolutely no idea what's happening. Google Translate can't keep up. So you get a basic idea. It's horse race betting software. It's what you expected it to be, with some happy little jingles and some Mario blocks. All right, now we're popping in the significantly rarer Super Mario Club. And big thank you to Shane Battye for sending this over, in addition to the Famicom Network System. Honestly, that's a pretty cool animation. Now, unlike the last piece of software, I can actually use the attached Famicom controller to, progress to the next screen. I don't have to use this one. However, if I were to actually be connected to the network, I don't know if that would be different, and I'd have to default to this. So this is really cool here. It's trying to connect to the network. We get a great little animation of Mario and Luigi on pogo sticks, but of course it can't connect to anything. It's mentioning something about checking the user manual. But unfortunately, that's about it. That's as far as at least I can get in this particular piece of software, because of course, all of those Famicom reviews were online. I don't know if they've been preserved at all. I'm not 100% sure or not if any of those reviews still exist anywhere online. If you know if they do, please let me know. It'd be pretty interesting to take a look at them. Speaking of preservation, you may be asking, well, are these cartridges preserved? And yes, I actually was able to dump both of them successfully. However, unfortunately, there are no emulators that can read them. It just kind of turns out to be a garbled mess. So unfortunately, the footage is as good as we're going to get for now, unless someone tinkers with an emulator to actually be able to display this properly. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this little overview / visual presentation of the Famicom Network System. Really appreciate you all watching, subscribing, joining us on Patreon, all that good stuff. And of course, thank you to Shane Battye for sending this over. Really appreciate it. We'll see you all next time.